Hola, Dane. Thank you. Gracias for Afterwater. We're very happy with your beautiful film in the competition. So once again, thanks so much, and thanks for being here for this session. Okay, let's begin. I would like to ask you, please tell us a little bit about the origins of this project. I saw actually in terms of production and co-production, it's an interesting co-production involving the Jegonju Digital Project and also Albert Serra's Underground. And I don't know, tell us a little bit how the film was accomplished and also like the conceptual origins of it.
Thanks, Max, for the invitation, for including the film in FICUNAM International competition, and also for the talk. So yeah, the origin of the film was, I think I made a short film a few years ago, and also when I was studying in Le Franois, my project was revolving around Vila Mauri, which is a submerged workers settlement next to Brasilia. That's now remnants of this, ruins of this city are now on the bottom of Lago Paranoá. And when the film was still orbit, when it was being shown, somehow people who saw it were always like coming and saying, "Oh, I know this story about submerged village, submerged city, submerged settlement somewhere where I come from." And so the sort of these stories piled up, and at one point became clear, okay, I can do something with all of this. And this is somehow like how the thinking about where Afterwater started. It started as a film about submerged settlements, but then as we went on, it somehow became more a film about lakes as a space. And in terms of, I mean, it was a long process, I think, and it's also, I think the film changed through these few years while we were making it, but it was, the Jeonju was actually the first funding we received because we were thinking about in the big, like also maybe before it was more something that in our head was even easier than what it turned out to be. So we were like thinking, okay, maybe we apply for Jeonju cinema project. And if you manage to get the funding, it would be a very easy way to make this film happen. But then the film somehow grew and we had to acquire additional funding. And the Spanish co-production, well, it was one of the stories that since the beginning, or like the story that was clearly gonna end up being in the film was Miguel de Unamuno's son, Manuel Bueno Martir. And there was decision to film at a lake that was an inspiration for the lake in the book. And that lake was Lago de Sanabria. And then Susana Kirali, who is the producer of the film, she was like, she knew Albert and Montse, and she thought, okay, maybe they could help us out with the Spanish part. So this is how we got to them. And it was really like assembling like these different bits and pieces in order to try to make the whole film now.
Okay, no, it's great that you mentioned Miguel de Unamuno. I'm a very fan of Unamuno also. And actually, I was going to ask you also, I mean, about your influences, maybe not only in terms of, of books, or I don't know if you have any other reference that accompany you in the process of making this film, maybe some other author or films, of course. I don't know, tell us a little bit.
I mean, the one really major influence on the film, and also maybe a figure who helped us shape it, was G. Evelyn Hutchinson. So he was a biologist, he was a professor at Yale, and he founded limnology. And limnology is a science about lakes. And somehow I came across Hutchinson's work during the research. When one starts to think about lakes, I think, this is how I got to him. And what I found interesting about him is that somehow his work comes from a time when so there was not a clear distinction, or let's say the boundary between scientific discourse and, for example, artistic discourse was more porous than it seems to be today, or like the language was less specialized. And his approach to lakes was really like all encompassing. He was interested in lakes as a scientist, but he was also interested in how lakes appear in poetry and literature. How do people imagine lakes? And I think this is something that was inspiring for us through the making of this film, in a way what we wanted is to create this space where different notions and different languages can be easily translated and can easily maybe come into dialogue with each other. Yeah, that will be like the one big influence. And I don't know, and I think of course there are films that I love and films that shaped, not just how I make my own films, but also how I see the world. But I think in terms of Afterwater, I think it's maybe, it would be a bit difficult for me to say, okay, this is like, for example, 1 or 2 or 3 names that somehow shape the film itself. Yeah, but
okay. Well, I found like some sort of connection between Afterwater and all the cities from the north, previous film. Mainly this perhaps this dichotomy between like the urban world or civilization and nature, and some sort of I don't know if maybe struggle that takes place even in the human body of this that reflects this dichotomy. Yeah, the presence of nature is even more evident in Afterwater. It's from the north, but it's like another path, But Afterwater seems to be like a statement of the nature, like winning this struggle, maybe. And I don't know. Tell me a little bit. Maybe there's some kind of obsession or particular interest in you, like of exploring this, this dichotomy in Afterwater.
Yes, yeah. How to say? I think it's also like a question how we articulate all these themes, and I think maybe we point all towards let's say the same field, the same area, but articulations are different. Because I, for example, would never. I think it's not, for me personally, I don't think it's so much about dichotomy, like that one thing's, let's say, culture or human thing ends and then the nature begins, because I think they are always somehow intertwined. It's very difficult to like separate them. And I think with Afterwater, there was this there are no man-made or man-altered landscapes, like very, very few. Fewer than in the previous film, and I think that was, part of the interest. And in general, I think it was something that was there for like some time now. This interest in, let's say, non-human life forms, and also maybe in art or film in particular, as a space where we can offer proposals or try to imagine how beings other than us could do these things that we think we are only capable of, like imagine, remember, dream. So I think it was, of course, I am there are super serious scientific works being done on these subjects. And I think my part or our part comes more from with this awareness of what art can bring to this dialogue. And I think this is also like, how do we exist in this, let's say, this sensible world around us, and how can we experience this sensible world, and can we maybe experience this world differently? And if we start experiencing this world differently, will we also start behaving differently? But I think there is, of course, these ideas of, this catastrophe that looms all over us at this point, that is somehow like also shaped this film very, very much.
Okay. And yes, because I mean, there's some transformation, no? Like happening, with the characters, and for me, I mean, like they become like conventional citizens, like urban human beings, and they end up being part, more how do you say, like involved, like with the natural environment, and they end up being even like some kind of other species of animal belonging to this environment. And I was very captivated the way you like structure this transformation, and all like the first hour of the film with this sharp image, like HD, very beautiful, and then at the end, maybe like the last half hour, I don't know, there's a completely different treatment of the image. And how did you work this, and how did you take decisions even of which camera to use for this?
I think it was so at one point it became clear that it's going to be a film, let's say, in parts or in fragments, even though I don't like to think, I mean, okay, this is a film with parts, but I would more like to think that it's like a film that's flowing nonstop and it's transforming from one thing into another. But it was clear that it's going to be in these pieces. And then each piece we were like, okay, how to also, I think, the choice of the image and the camera was like, how do we convey different temporalities that are there in the film? And we were like, okay, if we start with present, we're going to use the digital cameras of today, and then for the past, we decided for 16 millimeter. And then it was okay, so if we go into this future part, what to do? Do we film everything with like phones and GoPros and like the super current machines that we have at our disposal now? But the problem is that I think technology gets archaic so quickly, like there is this concept, the things that you use now in a couple of years will be completely outdated. And then for us, it was okay, maybe in order to imagine this different type of future, we need to go through these images of future that, or somehow the way that we remember the future. And this, I think, like points towards a certain type of cinema, like the Hollywood science fiction that I mostly saw on like a VHS tapes as a kid, And so it was like, okay, maybe if we work with the memory of these images and try to create almost like this lost VHS tape, but which proposes a future that was not possible in the cinema, then that, in a way, it will become more futuristic than if we really try to create something that is futuristic. And I think there is also something with this. I think what I realized that I like, I mean, also you feel it with 16, but this shift, that there is something about this. It's interesting to work with images that don't offer this, let's say, total visibility or total sharpness that we got so much used to. And like what happens with also because I think for some people I am also aware that like for some people, this non-legibility of the image, like not being able to see, or like non-clearness, non-sharpness of the image will be the problem. You know, just the fact that everything is simply blurry somehow like is also a challenge to the way that we see images today. You know, so I think this was also something that we were like also playing with. Yeah, but I think this is also somehow how we went through these like three main formats in the film.
No, actually, I think it works perfect, and it's beautiful. I mean, all this it's very stimulating, you know, to you know, you're watching the film and you go through different like stages of it, and yes, in the end, it's a film full of like epiphanies, and it is great. I want to ask you also about the texts. There are some texts that some characters actually read, and there are other texts that we read in the image. No, some sort of written voiceovers. No, voiceover. So tell us a little bit about all of these elements. Beginning with what are the characters reading?
Where are the characters reading?
What are they reading? Because they at least one of them is reading like a book, and he's like reciting.
Okay. So I think it was also, I understand. So it was also like a relationship between the text and the image. I think ultimately it's a film about fluidity and transformation, and also I wanted the relationship between, well, one of the things was like the relationship between text and image was something that was shifting throughout the film. And in the first part, they are always reading from different books, and the film opens with a quote from a treatise on limnology by G. Allen Hutchinson, which is like the first book that he sort of I also wanted to like start the film with sort of pointing towards this figure that was so important for the film. And then it was a poem by Wisława Szymborska called Woda, that's read partially in Polish, partially in Swedish, because it's the language of the two actors. I mean, they are friends, and they were at the moment of making the film a real life couple. And I was trying to find something, a text that both of them could read. And then I was thinking about some like a poem written in Polish, and then I started going to Szymborska's poem, and then like this poem somehow found us in a way, because I read it, I was this fits even too perfectly for the film, and I was like, no, I should just let it go and have it inside and not be, because it's also maybe not a film that it's not in danger of being maybe like too direct most of the time. So it was also like, I think made sense to have this poem in the beginning. And then of course there is the Unamuno, which was a sort of adapted and like condensed and also split into three voices, because the actual book is told in one voice, but there are three main characters, and there was also this idea to split the whole book into three different voices saying pieces of it. And with the third part, it was then, okay, so how do we imagine communication, like, because this is also one thing with science fiction, that like you often have this thing of people, like things happening in future, but language always stays the same. Language always stays the same language that we use today. And I was like, okay, but what if they begin to communicate in a way that is radically different from how we do it today? And then there was this idea with using breath and breathing as a way of communication and just subtitle it. And this was actually the part of the text that most comes from me. It was like written, that's it.
Okay, now that's quite interesting. Yeah, no, it's great, and that brings me to ask you about the sound of the sound design of the film. How did you come up to this proposal? You know, it's a sound like of many levels, you know, and how did you work it, you know, organically?
I mean, it was just work. I think when I think about sound, because of course sound.
I mean, I ask you because it's like a very important, you know, element of the film, you know, in this immersive experience that we are into.
Yeah, but I think it's also because I understand I think I get the question, but it's also like this. I mean, for me, of course, going to cinema and also being physically in cinema involves this audio experience as much as the visual one. And I think it's also about paying attention to it. I mean, when I think about it, I like to think that it's not about equality, you know, like, okay, you spend enough time, but is equal amount of time working with image and sound, but like, for me, they are equally important, you know, like, and it's about also giving space to the people who are your collaborators, giving them enough space and enough time to think about everything that they can propose, and also discussing with them and being not just pushing in one direction, and also understanding when is there a moment to work on the image and when is there a moment to work on the sound. Because I also think that I think, of course, it's when it comes to sound, it came also from the people who were recording the sound, but also Jakov Munizsaba, who did the sound design, and Linus Nickel, who did the sound mix. A lot of the ideas of how sound is treated and how those things, what we can do actually with the sound material came through the process and dialogue with them. I don't think I had. I mean, of course, it was important to get as much as possible the sound that is comes from a location, and also to somehow retain the specificity of different places. But I think it's also just I wish I could give like a more like a different answer, but it's just like it was just work.
Okay, I understand. And well, for last, I would like to mention and to ask you a very nice element that is found at the end of the film, and is this song of Arthur Russell, "Let's Go Swimming." How did you found this? Are you regularly listening to Arthur Russell's songs? The song fits perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, I think it was similar to the Szymborska poem. It was like a song of it was a song that I knew, like the same way I knew the poem by Szymborska, and it was somehow there. And then at one point it was like, yes, this should be in. But yeah, I'm a big Arthur Russell fan. I mean, I love everything, but I really love World of Echo, and it somehow made sense to use the closing track from that album to end also this film. And then also when this idea was like, okay, so this song will be there in the end, I also tried to include pieces of the text in the text itself that is spread in the third part. Because I think it was also like one of the things was also that we were trying to do is to, okay, there were like certain building blocks in the film, but then also allowing these things to somehow spill over and like flow into each other. So in terms of text, but also in terms of, for example, words from Arthur Russell's song appearing somehow before, and then when they're again, they almost like echo what became before. And I think this fluidity and like the stream, or like these different streams flowing into each other, was like this feeling that I think this film wants to create in yeah.
No, it's great. I love it, and it's like an invitation also, no? Like, let's go swimming. Yeah, so it's perfect. No, well, Dan, thanks so much for your film, for your words, and we'll see each other in person very soon.
Yeah, I'm super happy.
Gracias.
Thank you. Gracias.